What's up guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel, Red Reviews. I'm Vincent Rojas back from camp and today I will be reviewing Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. I'll start this review off by saying that I actually did see this movie the Friday it came out since I was on a break from camp on that weekend. However, that weekend was also my sister's birthday and I didn't have the time or the energy to make this review on that weekend. That weekend I also rewatched Raiders of the Lost Ark. Then this past weekend I saw Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I rewatched Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and now I saw Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, as well as going to the theater again to rewatch Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Yeah, I like movies, and I like Indiana Jones, okay? Sue me. Side note, I'd never seen Temple of Doom or Kingdom of the Crystal Skull before this weekend, and I liked Temple of Doom a lot, while still liking it less than Raiders or Crusade. I was aware of all the hate around Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and I gotta say, I kinda liked it. Don't get me wrong, it's a terrible movie and by far the worst Indiana Jones movie, but it was really funny in so many spots. I burst out laughing so hard when Mutt swings on the vines like he's Tarzan, and I would absolutely watch that movie again with a bunch of my friends just to laugh at it. So, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is directed by James Mangold and it stars Harrison Ford, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Mads Mikkelsen, Antonio Banderas, Toby Jones, John Rhys-Davies, Boyd Holbrook, and Shaunette Renee Wilson. That's a pretty stacked cast. In this movie, it's 1969, and Indiana Jones races Nazis in order to find the two halves of the Antikythera, Archimedes' dial, which is said to hold great power. First off, this is the first Indiana Jones movie not directed by Steven Spielberg. It is directed by James Mangold, the director of 2007's 3:10 to Yuma, Night and Day, The Wolverine, Logan, and Ford v Ferrari, among others. This man makes movies ranging from entertaining to good to great. Granted, I have not seen his full filmography, but from what I've seen, he hasn't yet made a movie that I would call bad, Dial of Destiny included. This is by no means a bad film. It's actually a pretty okay one with a lot of positive aspects, but it also has a lot of negative aspects that bring it down and prevent it from achieving greatness. Steven Spielberg has said that having a new director would allow a new generation to bring their perspective to the story. This brings with it some issues I had with the movie, which I'll get into in a bit. One of the more prominent negative aspects is definitely the CGI in this movie. I've already trashed a movie CGI before in my Flash review, but this movie's de-aging is absolutely going to turn off a lot of people from this movie. The first 15 minutes or so revolve around a big action sequence involving a young, de-aged Harrison Ford and Toby Jones' character, Basil Shaw, on a Nazi train at night. The de-aging work is absolutely not very good at all. Harrison Ford looks very plasticky and weird throughout this whole sequence. It is very unnerving to see what's supposed to be a young Harrison Ford speaking in an old Harrison Ford's voice. He moves unnaturally at times as well, and you can just tell that that's not young Harrison Ford. I mean, they're not fooling anyone. The opening is dark since it's set at night, and that's most likely done to mask the poor de-aging work. Apart from that, the opening is actually a pretty great action sequence that was quite thrilling to watch, I can't lie. Unfortunately, CGI is also overused throughout the whole movie to the point where some action scenes just felt really fake in a way the original trilogy just wasn't. That original Indiana Jones trilogy was an incredible showcase of practical effects, and the loss of that is part of what makes this movie not achieve that same magic for me. An interesting part of the movie was how they dealt with Indiana Jones not being around Marion Ravenwood or Mutt Williams. Spoilers for Crystal Skull, but at the end of that movie, Indy and Marion get married and they're all happy and Mutt Williams is their son. However, Marion isn't joining Indy on this adventure and the movie gives a reason why. And without spoilers, it's a pretty good reason that fleshes out Indy's character, giving him more depth as well as demonstrating why he's in the state that he is at the start of the movie, depressed and angry and sad. I would now like to shift gears and discuss the tuk-tuk chase scene through the crowded streets of Tangier in this movie, and why I dislike that scene, and what it represents in terms of the modern Hollywood action-adventure movie. All of the Indiana Jones movies have had extended sequences involving some sort of vehicle. Raiders having a truck chase, Temple having a minecart chase, Crusade having a motorcycle chase, and also having a great tank sequence, and Crystal Skull having that infamous chase through the jungle, which I found so funny. The DP for this movie is a man named Phelan Papamichael. He is a frequent collaborator of Mangold's, working with him on such movies as Identity, Walk the Line, 3:10 to Yuma, Night and Day, and Ford v Ferrari, which was excellently shot in my opinion. I don't consider this man to be a bad DP, which for those who don't know stands for Director of Photography, also known as the cinematographer. The reason I brought him up at all is that I don't think his style of cinematography fits Indiana Jones. Maybe it's because I rewatched the original trilogy very recently, but the cinematography in those movies is exceptional. Douglas Slocum's work as DP on those movies is excellent. The action is always framed very clearly, and there are a lot of wides with close-ups for emphasis. Even the scenes that aren't action-centric are very interesting in that original trilogy because of the way Slocum moves the camera. Whedon's cinematography is very modern, with a lot of close-ups and quick cuts, which isn't inherently a bad thing, but having just rewatched Slocum's work, this feels like a step down. I don't understand why Whedon's cinematography is so bland in the Tuk Tuk Chase, since Ford v Ferrari's races felt so intense with the excellent shot structure. The Tuk Tuk Chase just felt like a generic Hollywood movie chase, nothing special about it and nothing to make it stand out like with Slocum's chases. This creates a distinct lack of tension throughout the whole chase because I'm just witnessing a scene that I've seen 10,000 times before in other movies. There's nothing inherently wrong with that if you view this film as a normal Hollywood action-adventure movie, but the problem is that this is an Indiana Jones movie. Indiana Jones movies set the bar for future action-adventure movies really high with Raiders of the Lost Ark, which I consider to be the best action-adventure film of all time, at least of all of the movies I've seen. But this movie just feels like a generic action-adventure movie. Making this movie for a new generation runs the risk of alienating fans of those earlier films, as I feel it did. When it came out, I saw this movie with my grandfather, who had seen the original Raiders of the Lost Ark in theaters the day that movie came out. He wanted to watch this movie, but after it ended, the drive home was about how bad the CGI was, the overuse of it, and how it tries and fails to recapture the magic of the older movies by bringing back legacy characters and having Nazis as the villains. Having recently seen Kingdom of the Crystal Skull for the first time, I found it funny that that movie has a line where Mutt's like, "What are you, like 80?" And as of me filming this review, yes, Harrison Ford is indeed 80 years old. He can't do the same things he could when he was younger. He isn't able to climb like he could before because he's all sore. At this rate, even though this movie's a send-off to the character, I like to think that if they ever did another one, they're gonna have to find Indiana Jones because he'll be dead by the time that movie comes out. I'm sorry, that was a really morbid joke. Harrison Ford is great in this movie. He does a great amount of the stunts in this movie himself, and you can tell that he's really having a lot of fun with this character. He's played for 42 years now. That's a crazy amount of time. Phoebe Waller-Bridge was also pretty good in this movie as Helena Shaw, Indy's goddaughter. I thought she worked pretty well, and she didn't come off annoying or anything for me. Her and Indy's interests aren't always aligned in the movie, and that makes for some interesting banter between them. I was a bit worried going in since Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny doesn't have legacy actors alongside Indy during the adventure proper, so I didn't know how engaging the conversations would be without anyone we know from before in the adventure besides Indy. John Rhys-Davies is in this movie as Sala, but he isn't in on the adventure. And even Crystal Skull had Marion alongside Indy for a large portion of the movie. However, I thought Phoebe did a good job at not being completely overshadowed by Harrison Ford in this movie. On the other hand, the character of Teddy, played in this movie by a 16-year-old boy who's a first-time actor named Ethan Isidore, did get on my nerves a little. I don't know if it was the exaggerated accent or what, but he was quite annoying, in my opinion. I got the sense that they wanted another Short Round in this movie, but Short Round is just such a good character in Temple of Doom, and trust me, this guy's no Short Round. Mads Mikkelsen, of course, is excellent, as per usual for him. He's always great in everything he's in, and his performance is no different in this film. His motivation is extremely interesting, and it's not something I've ever seen before in a movie, so props for that. His Jurgen Voller is a much better villain than Cate Blanchett's Irina Spalko, in my opinion. John Williams' score, of course, is incredible, as expected. I can't say anything that hasn't already been said about John Williams before. He's John Williams. The man is a master, and he's one of the greatest composers of all time, film or no film. Additionally, this movie has a ton of fun Easter eggs to previous movies, whether it's a returning musical theme or the number 1981 on a license plate. 1981, of course, being the year Raiders of the Lost Ark came out. Oh, one more thing I was disappointed about was that there was no big guy fight in this movie. All of the other movies up until this point have had big guy fights, except for The Last Crusade. Raiders of the Lost Ark had the shirtless Nazi fight, Temple of Doom had the big thuggy fight, and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull had the massive Russian fight. The shirtless Nazi and the big thuggy are both played by professional wrestler Pat Roach, and he was supposed to have a fight scene in The Last Crusade with Indy as well, but it ended up being cut, even though he is in the movie for a scene. This movie has a really big Nazi who I was sure was going to have a fight with Indiana Jones at some point, but he doesn't, which was a bit sad for me, I'll admit. Now, I really want to talk about spoilers in this movie, so I'm going to have my second spoiler-filled part in a video. Are all those losers who haven't seen the movie out of here? Good. So first off, in the opening scene of the movie, Jürgen Voller should be dead. He gets smacked off a moving train by a metal pipe that hit him on the head. He should be dead, but he's alive, and it's never brought up again. It's never explained how he survived that. We just have to accept that he did. Movie magic or whatever, I guess. The motivation I talked about earlier that I liked so much was that he wants to use the dial to go back in time to 1939 to assassinate Hitler in order to win the war. This is not an angle that I've seen played out in any other movie, and it was a cool idea to see a Nazi wanting to kill Hitler to win the war. Secondly, that ending. Indiana Jones traveling back in time to witness the siege of Syracuse by the Romans and him interacting with Archimedes is strangely not what bothered me. It's the fact that Helena Shaw punches him in the face. Indy is really serious about staying in the past to relive history, to experience firsthand what he studied his whole life. It's a very moving scene, but Helena tells him that it would change the course of history. And she punches him in the face, knocking him out, and she brings him into his own time. The lesson here is that he must fix his problems with Marion after the death of their son Mutt Williams after he enlisted in the war. Since the loss of Mutt Williams is what makes Marion and Indy separate, Indy must now fix things up with her. That is not my issue. It's the fact that Helena makes this decision, not Indy, our protagonist. This takes away his agency as a character in service of another character who we've never met before this movie. That made the ending with Marion feel a little unearned and cheap for me, although it was admittedly very touching when Indy and Marion reenact the kiss scene from Raiders as John Williams' incredible theme for Marion plays. Overall, this movie was alright as an action-adventure movie, and it's not the worst Indiana Jones movie. That honor goes to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but it still wasn't a great Indiana Jones movie. It's just another modern action-adventure movie. It's fun and entertaining, but it's not as good of a send-off for a character as Logan was for Wolverine, another James Mangold directed film. I hoped it would be, especially after seeing Boyd Holbrook, who played Donald Pierce, the villain in Logan, play a Nazi in this movie. In my opinion, Logan is the better send-off for a legacy character. This just feels like the Disney version of Indiana Jones, and that was disappointing to me after having rewatched all of the other ones really recently. This movie was a mixed bag, and at the end of the day, the way The Last Crusade ended was the way Indiana Jones ended for me. If you really like those older movies, then you're probably going to end up disliking this movie. And if you're someone from the new generation, just watch the older movies. The older movies are always the answer in this scenario. Just watch the older ones. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and Dial of Destiny are kind of pointless in my opinion. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this review. Thank you so much for watching. Again, thank you for watching this review about a week or so after it should have come out. Sorry for that. I did my best. To the viewers of this video, go have a nice day. What's left of it. Peace.